This time on Watches of Tomorrow. What time is it?
Hello, I am Gepwin, your Time Master. Welcome to Watches of Tomorrow, where we discuss the timepieces of the future.
Yes, future timepieces.
I'm joined as always by Time Lord Isix.
Well, I'm gonna go back in time and fiddle with things. Hi.
And this, we need to start talking about some future time instead of future times.
Yes, future time. So we got a sort of a special focus today. Things that maybe go on your wrist.
Yes, things that go on your wrist.
Near it.
I've made a couple of exceptions for the pocket variety, which I have a particular fondness for. I used to have a pocket watch when I was an edgy teen.
Yeah, I got one of those on my list too. I also got a pocket watch, so it works. Checks out.
But I think since we start with synopsises, and I think it's best if we just synopsis a brief history of timekeeping. So we know where we started, where we're going, where we've wound up.
A long time ago, in a galaxy that we live in, there was like sundials and stuff, right?
Yes, there were sundials, which were probably the earliest timekeeping device. It's hard to know because stuff that was made out of anything other than stone from that long ago is gone. But up into even the 14th century, sundials were it.
Mm-hmm.
There were a few introductions of mechanical sort of keeping methods, and in through there and near the end of the 14th century, you had candle clocks, which measured how long a candle has been burning. You had water clocks in China, which kind of used the drip of water over time to fill up a bucket.
I love me a water clock. It has a lot of connections to the show Connections. In fact,
yes, I remember Connections. That was a good show.
I should watch it again. Anyway.
It aged well, but you are very surprised how old it looks when you go back and watch it.
Yes.
So the next particular advancement that we get was in the sort of 15th century. They invented the escapement.
What are we escaping from with this here?
You're escaping from the freewheeling action of a drive mechanism. So your normal clock or watch, any kind of timekeeping device, is basically made of two particular elements. One is a drive mechanism, which is moving all the gears and wheels and whatnot. And the other is called the escapement, which is usually a little kind of clicky thing with a geared wheel that prevents the thing from just spinning out all its energy at once. And it gives you your little second tick. Every time it moves along, it moves the clock forward by what we call 1 second, and then adjusting how fast the escapement goes is how you kind of dial in your timekeeping.
Yeah, it limits the energy input to your system.
So Galileo, who we've heard of, has did a bunch of experiments with pendulums and discovered that no matter how heavy a pendulum is, it always moves back and forth at the same speed based on how long the pendulum's rope is.
I could go into the physics there, but I'll spare you guys today.
That was later used as the driving behind what you would call a pendulum clock, which used the motion of a pendulum to kind of set the clock at a specific speed to move the escapement.
There's a problem with this. It doesn't work on boats.
Yes, and you need time on boats because that is the only way that you can measure your longitude.
Mm-hmm.
You can measure your latitude based on the sun, but you cannot measure your longitude unless you know how long you have been at sea.
So what time is it? All right, so we got the stars at this particular location, do some math, and then, okay, but if you don't got, like, a clock, you don't know what time it is, so...
The government of England issued something called the Longitude Prize, which would give just a massive amount of fame and money to anyone who could invent a clock that would work on a ship.
I wonder if we'll get a spring of innovation here.
Aha. Yes, this led to the invention of spring clocks, which were actually very, very small. They used a coiled piece of metal that slowly released its energy over time and did not have a need for a pendulum.
Little more portable.
This was in the late 15th, early 16th century, and of course, as soon as we have spring-driven clocks that can be relatively compact, you start seeing the first watches. The first ever known watch to exist was a pocket watch from 1505.
Very nice, very nice.
Your next innovation in clockmaking does not appear until the 1960s, which is a time period we have become quite familiar with on this show.
Yes.
In the 1960s, they discover the properties of piezoelectric crystals.
Yeah, so we got some crystals that we can now, maybe digitize something.
Yeah, so you have quartz, and they discovered that if you apply an electric current to a quartz crystal, it begins to vibrate at a consistent speed.
Very nice. So you can sort of time things, yeah.
Measuring the number of vibrations per second, you are able to make a watch that functions by measuring itself against the vibrations of a quartz crystal.
So really all you need is a battery.
Yes, all you need is a battery and a quartz crystal, and you're good. That is how a lot of modern wristwatches worked up into the kind of 80s and 90s when we started moving things over to the atomic clock system. Now, atomic clocks use the decay of a cesium atom to standardize clocks based on a cesium atom's wavelength.
Yes, so it's basically vibrating, doing its things, and it's going to be doing so many of these per second, and so you can sort of, it's like, okay, we're going to define the second as this many, these oscillations. So
you kind of had this thing. In the 1500s, you develop spring clocks, which are accurate to about 1 second every day or two.
So pretty good.
Your quartz crystal clocks become accurate to 1 second a week or month or so.
Very nice.
That's a lot better.
Yes.
Your atomic clocks are accurate to 1 second in a few million years.
So you're not going to be losing any time forwards or backwards with these. At least not during your lifetime.
Then in 2014, physicists began working on something called an optical clock, which functions about the same way as a atomic clock does, but it uses lasers and other elements to do some of the measuring. They have been able to make a clock that is accurate out to about 300 billion years.
Well, thankfully I plan to live that long, so I'll make good use of it.
And then you will have to reset your watch.
Oh man, my watch is off by 1 second. Well, all life in the universe has come and passed, so I guess nobody cares anymore. So
that brings us to the modern era of timekeeping, where everything is set by atomic clocks via the internet.
Unless your clocks are traveling very quickly relative to certain atomic clocks. But anyway.
Well, that's something that we should talk about a little bit at some point here. Because if you're talking about the future of timekeeping, you have to kind of get into the thing that we, as humans developing these measurement systems, have never once measured time.
Yeah, we've measured intervals, but the intervals are very dependent on several things. For instance, are you looking at your interval measuring device, your clock, in as it's moving past you, for instance, or is it falling into a black hole, or is it just sitting here on the ground? All these things can provide modifications to what you're perceiving versus what it is itself experiencing, and so your personal flow of time is going to be different than the measuring device, almost universally. And sure, in a lot of those cases, it's not going to matter all that much. But when you're, say, putting up a GPS satellite, it might start mattering as your satellites are going around the planet and very quickly, and in a different part of your gravitational field and all that fun stuff.
Yes, time works weirdly.
Yes.
And something that you need to understand about watches and clocks, they measure themselves. They do not measure time.
Yes, they measure themselves.
So, yes, like you said, when you're dealing with something that needs super, super precise time measurement, like everything.
Yes. You need to be taking some of the math into consideration as far as your differences of perception.
Because time is wonky. And in fact, time moves at different speeds on different parts of the planet, depending on where you are.
So I'm on top of a mountain, and it's going to be a little bit different. Yeah, okay.
Yes, it is matters of, fractions of milliseconds. But the speed of time is variable.
The sort of the ways I've sort of, as a physicist, kind of wrapped my head around it is that, no matter what you're doing, for your own individual self, be it a subatomic particle, or if you're going to have yourself as an entirety entity, your whole being, you can sort of view your personal time as a vector going off in a larger space-time sort of a coordinate system, and what that your particular arrow in that is pointing relative to everybody else is going to be different, and you can do some clever math to sort of try to build a picture of the world that has these linking to each other, so you can sort of do coordinate transformations and all that fun stuff. But it's still, you kind of have to sort of realize, okay, so everyone's sort of skewed off from straight up on what sort of quote true time would be, and we don't actually know what direction that would be in the first place. So it's like we can sort of measure times like, oh yeah, the sort of galactic scale, but the space-time on the large scale, it does have a little bit of a curvature, so that's going to be throwing that things off as well. So yeah, we don't actually know what the proper quote rate of time is.
That gets into an interesting point that I kind of wanted to bring up on the sci-fi time. This isn't like a timekeeping device per se, but it's something that I liked in the Warhammer 40K universe, which is this expanded lore universe. This is like thousands of books, several video games. It's the system in which the Warhammer 40K tabletop wargaming system is set in.
Yeah.
They have a time measurement system that adds an extra number onto the end of dates. So you would have something like, this happened in, the second millennium, 200th year, this day, this month, and then you have this extra number on the end. And on Earth, that extra number is 0. And then the further you get from Earth, that number goes up. And that number represents how inaccurate the time will be relative to Earth time.
That's kind of clever.
Because the further away you get from Earth on a galactic scale, the less accurate your timekeeping can be consistently over that kind of distance.
I like that. So, sort of, it's like, okay, we're just going to sort of push the math side around, and we're just going to say, this is our fudge factor.
Yeah, you're calling it Earth time, and then you have a little thing at the end that's like plus or minus 100 years.
Yeah. It's right around there,
Well, I think we should just jump in, and I think both of us wound up in this thing that sci-fi shows really are somewhat enamored with pocket watches.
Yes, pocket watches.
And they are very often associated with time travelers.
Yes.
I think because of the anachronism factor. Pocket watches were considered like a wealthy prestige item up into like the 1900s.
So you get the gentleman time traveler who's going back and forth in time, and he needs to keep good track of what time it is, even though, yeah.
In fact, this is another slight aside, but it's something that I liked. Pocket watches were a very standard wealth-centered item. They were kind of the only watches you would see around for a very long period of time. And they became very synonymous with Enlightenment thinking. And we even hit this thing. You know how now, every time someone needs to describe something that happens with people, they go, think of your brain like a computer.
Okay.
During the Enlightenment thinking, when everyone was being technological and sciencey, anytime they needed to describe a person, they'd say, think of your mind like a watch.
So I'm off by 5 minutes. Okay.
Yes. Because a crafted pocket watch was the pinnacle of machined technology.
Oh, that makes sense, yeah.
In fact, you even have the watchmaker argument of the divine, which arises during the Enlightenment, that says the universe is like a watch with a bunch of interconnecting pieces and bits that all have to mesh up precisely, and then the argument goes that the existence of a watch implies the existence of a watchmaker.
That sort of notion has filtered down through sciences since that time, and they've scientificized the argument a bit, but yeah, it's pretty much same thing. I'm going to talk about a Discworld book at some point in here, so I may as well get some of it out of the way. Go for it.
They have the Terry Pratchett version, which is the existence of a poorly made watch implies the existence of a blind watchmaker.
I guess that does kind of describe the cosmos to a degree.
But we both wound up with, I think, 1 or 2 pocket watches on our future of timekeeping list, so why don't you go first? I think yours is something that people might be more familiar with.
Well, so most folks are familiar with Doctor Who in some capacity or another, and though it doesn't necessarily feature heavily, but the Doctor has carried a pocket watch from time to time, sometimes as part of his costume. But the one in particular I'm thinking about for our episode today is the quote, the fob watch that was he used in conjunction with Chameleon Arch. Are you familiar with that at all, Gepwin?
Yes, that was the Family of Blood?
Yes, the Family of Blood, and it was like a two-part. I forget the name of the other episode. But yeah, so the Doctor was like on the run, and he wanted to like hide, and it's like, okay, I don't want to like fight these people, but they're really kind of coming after me specifically. So he's like, well, maybe I'll just hide for a while, and then they'll sort of go away. And so he used this thing called Chameleon Arch to basically turn himself into a human. And as part of the process there, his memories, and I guess, I forget if it was like, some of his genetic imprint was stored in the watch in sort of a magical techno sort of fashion. So that when the watch was opened, he would be restored to what he was before. But until that time, it would be kept inside. So he was carrying around a watch that he wasn't checking ever. for a couple episodes.
Yes, that was a really, really good two-parter.
Yes.
That was David Tennant as Doctor Who, who's always been my favorite of the reboot Doctors.
Yeah, he's rather fantastic, and that was a fantastic episode.
Yes, and it's a very emotional episode. He gets to play basically a different character who is, what if the Doctor were a timid school teacher right before World War One?
Yes, and and so he's kind of trying to be a nice guy, but he's also kind of a school teacher before World War One, so kind of fitting with some of the tropes there. It's like, oh yeah, you got certain kind of disciplines and things like that kind of make him come off as an ass, but that's also kind of the mode of how things were at the time. So he's very much fitting in, for better or worse.
So mine was actually from another time traveler, but not in a particular series. This is actually one of the rare reoccurring characters that appeared in the 1990s reboot of The Outer Limits.
Huh. I've seen a little bit of that.
There's a character that I don't know if in the series is ever particularly named, but they are credited as Nicholas Prinstance.
Nicholas Prinstance.
Played by an actor named Alex Diakin. It's an odd last name I'm not sure how to pronounce. But he plays a time traveler who shows up from time to time in these episodes and has a time-traveling pocket watch device. He pulls out the pocket watch and he clicks it, and it sends him to whatever era it has been set to.
Very nice.
I believe the first episode that he appears in is one where he helps someone track down a Nazi war criminal who is hiding out in like some of the 1990s sort of trials they were doing to find ex-Nazi leaders who were hiding in America.
That episode actually sounds familiar.
He also appeared in an episode where he taught to teenagers how worshiping the Confederacy actually does make you racist.
Good on him. I'm seeing a trend here, by the way.
I believe the third episode was one where they reveal this sort of time bureau that he works for. And it's this whole kind of morality thing about whether or not it's moral to change your own timeline.
First you have to figure out how time travel would actually work. Then how it affecting things in the past would actually work if you can. And then then you have to worry about the moral implications of we have the power to do this. Should we? Yes.
I think it wouldn't be our shows if I didn't return to Star Trek for at least a couple of things here.
Go for it.
I have two, and they're both really small ones, so I'm just going to roll them into one. But there was this very interesting thing that I found in Next Generation as far as their watches go, which is that they're very secretive about them. So there's two episodes. There's the Star Trek Next Generation episode, A Matter of Time, in which a time-traveling con man posing as an archaeologist appears on the Enterprise.
And, he's like, yes, I come from the whatever century in your future, and I'm here to basically observe your decision process in this, important point in history while the Enterprise is trying to, fix this environmental disaster on this planet. And of course, while he's hanging out there, he's slowly sort of picking up items from around the ship and putting them in his time machine.
He had something that I think is really neat that I haven't seen done very often in anything else. He has a watch ring. He's wearing a little ring that he constantly keeps checking throughout the episode. It turns out it's the timer for when his time machine is going to go back. But he has it on a ring, and I've never really seen watch rings.
Neither have I. I've seen rings of all sorts of other sorts. Some of them more outlandish than others, but watch ring I don't think I've seen. Yeah.
The other appears from the first Next Generation movie, Star Trek Generations.
Mm-hmm.
The villain of that piece, named Soren, has a more traditional sort of watch, which he just keeps checking out. Also for kind of the bad guy has a time thing that they're working with.
Yes.
Like the villain is on the clock, so he has to keep checking the clock, ticking clock sort of thing.
Yes, I need to blow up this star exactly this moment in order to get the little thing with you to come at me, and I can do that.
The other thing is he also has a little flappy thing on his watch to keep the time private. He has to keep opening it up or flip it up or turn it on. And that seems to be a consistent theme in Star Trek The Next Generation, at least. Every time they have a timekeeping device appear on the show, it's some sort of secretive thing that the people have to keep hidden. Like, time is apparently something that you have to be covert about.
Well, maybe they realize in the future the awkwardness of someone sort of like craning their head over to look at somebody else's watch.
Yes, it is very awkward. But no one else wears watches. Apparently they can just get the time from the computer or some other thing, or maybe they all carry around cell phones we don't see.
In their lack of pockets. Where are you keeping your cell phone? Don't ask.
If you have a watch in Star Trek, you're the villain.
Yes.
Except for one, I just wanted to mention this because it was funny. There is one time where Dr. Crusher is wearing a watch in one scene. It's probably a costuming error where her sleeve pulls up and she's wearing a very, very small, mechanical wristwatch, but it's probably a costuming error where she just didn't take her watch off when she put on her coat.
Yeah, very likely. Alternatively, it's evil Crusher from another dimension.
That could be.
Yes.
That's from this very interesting website I found that people should check out if they have any interest at all, called watchesinmovies.info.
Nice.
Just as a complete list of watches that appear in movies and TV shows.
I should check that out for my listing. I sort of fumbled around. It's like, oh yeah, there's that one watch, that one thing here. So maybe I should go for another one here.
Yes.
So back on the time travel, how about a Casio CA53W twin-SIP data bank, man?
That's very specific.
And guess what that one's from?
Given the retro-iness and that we talked about some things beforehand, I'm guessing Back to the Future.
Yes. That's the watch Marty McFly is sporting in Back to the Future. The crazy thing about it is it's very 80s as far as total design. It is a calculator watch. Also, you can still buy these.
Oh. I had a calculator watch when I was younger.
Was it a Casio C853W twin-SIP databank?
I would have to look at the thing. Let me see.
But yeah, it doesn't really feature at all as far as the content of the movie goes, but it definitely helps sort of drive home the 80s feel of the movie to an extra little bit of a little detail like that. And that's I always sort of thought, it's like, yeah, this is a pretty cool thing. And like, this movie is from the past, but it's like it's in the future, even in the first movie when they go to the past and the third. What? Okay, yeah.
No, mine was some sort of Casio because I recognized this design, but no, it was not the Back to the Future specific watch.
Well, they have changed up the design a little bit over time, but it is, I guess, super easy to make and cheap, and people still buy them, probably because of Back to the Future. So,
one of my friends recently got one of these just for the nostalgia factor.
Nice.
Interestingly, I also have a calculator watch on my list, but mine is a future calculator watch from the original run of Battlestar Galactica.
Oh, nice.
One of the commanders on that show, which I'm not particularly familiar with, so I do not know names, but he wears a very, very bulky calculator watch that looks retro sci-fi-y and really cool.
Excellent. I've only seen bits and pieces of the original Battlestar, so I wouldn't know the guy either myself. I didn't even realize there's a watch in there, so...
Yeah, just wearing that. Also, the pilots, like Starbuck in the originals, have two-way TV wristwatches.
Communication
I'm
devices.
not sure if they ever use them, but they have communication wristwatches.
Very cool. Huh.
And of course, that brings us neatly to one of my other picks, which is just the 2005 Battlestar Galactica. Everyone just has watches. They're pretty modern-looking watches. They look basically like our watches because that's kind of the level of technological anachronism they get on this show.
Yes.
They are all hexagons because for some reason everything in the 2005 Battlestar Galactica has to be a hexagon.
There's probably some motif there, and I didn't watch enough of the show to get it. So,
including paper, all their paper is hexagons. It's very weird.
Seems very inefficient to me.
Yeah, it is. Also, a watch informs one of the core emotional arcs of the show when General Adama and his son bonding over like an old watch that he uses for calculations. But since the 2005 Battlestar is going off of this kind of retro-y idea where they can't use calculation computers and they have to make all of their calculations for things like FTL travel manually, like an old submarine, they are constantly using watches and clocks to do so.
So it's very essential. So it's good to have some timepiece like that around, even despite the stuff we talked about earlier about whole relativity business.
Yes. Yeah, how a watch functions during an FTL jump, I don't even want to speculate on.
Depends on where your watch is relative to yourself, and so if you can get two watches, you can sort of look at both of them simultaneously. You might have a better idea, but better to have more watches just floating around if you can.
That's almost never going to be on screen.
Yes.
So you had at least one more watch for us, didn't you?
I had two more technically.
Okay.
One of them's not particularly I guess unique as far as its science fictionist, but it does have the proper look for it, and that's the watches that were featured in Men in Black.
Yes, those good old retro suit sort of watch.
And they have this sort of like triangular design, and sure the hands on it go around in circle, but like the marks on that on the face of it is in this sort of triangular design, and the rest of the watch sort of conforms to that. And I don't remember if they did anything special actually in the movie or in the spin-off animation shows or not. But they just look cool, and Man in Black definitely fits into our categories of science fiction here.
Yes, I seem to remember there was at least something in one of the 3 Men in Black movies where they hit the little button on the side of the watch and it activated something like a remote control, but I cannot remember what it would have been.
I remember there was a couple moments where remote controls were used, but I don't remember what they were controlling, so
Well, now I can get to this is the last one that I have in the more kind of traditional watches, which is actually the Predator, or Predators from all the various Predator movies.
Yeah.
They carry around a large, bulky, wrist-mounted, multi-tool thingamabob that includes a timekeeping device that they often use as a countdown to blow themselves up.
When in doubt, activate your watch to explode.
But in all of the kind of sci-fi things, this is one of the ones that includes an alien numerical system. It's one of those ones where the character looks at it, goes, what on earth is going on, then sees one of the digits disappear, goes, up, that's a countdown, and runs.
All right, so whereas some factor of some number here, just run. So when you see the alien numbers, be wary.
Yes, I think that they even had they didn't do the watches. Like, I almost put Stargate on this list, but they're set in modern times, so it's not sci-fi watches. But they do a similar thing where they have alien numerical systems that they figure out as a countdown or count up. I think they were holding it upside down in one of the scenes.
There's they're not necessarily wristwatches. There was definitely at least a couple time bombs where they had sort of look at it. It's like, okay, there's this thing swirling around here and it's getting smaller. Okay, this is what this is.
It's a fun trope.
Yes. The ticking clock, but you don't know what the clock says. Oh no. My last wristwatch here is from the James Bond movie series.
Yeah, which we wouldn't traditionally think of as sci-fi, but definitely has some science fiction elements mixed into all of those.
Yeah, and through a lot of the movies, Bond, goes to visit Q Branch at some point, and then picks up some, gadgets and things like that. Some of them which are quite reasonable, some that are completely, completely fictional and don't make any sense, or are also impossible in various fashions. Remember the invisible car, for instance?
Oh, yes. That's sort of possible.
It's sort of possible now, but not really when they sort of threw it in the movie series there.
But that's how sci-fi technology is supposed to work.
Yeah, you gotta get an idea first, then you press for it. But the particular watch I'm thinking about is the one from GoldenEye. And why do you think I'm thinking about this one?
GoldenEye. Was that the one with the little that one could activate bombs, and I think had a laser.
Yeah, the laser watch. You could zap people with it, melt things. Yeah, I figured one of the watches I listed here it would need to be something that had a laser in it. So
I think his watches have included a remote control for his car. Lasers is a pretty common one. One of the earlier ones that I remember seeing, I think, in one of the Sean Connery bonds was a watch with a magnet in it that he could use to like move a knife around on a table that he got himself out of a binding or something with. Back when magnets were
like the
technology.
Like, we need more technology in this thing. Let's put some magnets in. People will be amazed.
And I believe there was even something as simple as the garrote watch, where the little spinny thing on the side pulled out and it was just attached to a string.
And I think the Austin Powers movie, at least the first one, made fun of this sort of trope by having like a sleep dart in his watch.
I can't remember what it does, but Johnny English has a lot of weird stuff with his watch.
Now, I can't say I've seen more than maybe a few minutes of any of those movies, but I wouldn't be surprised, yes.
The first one is very, very good. They go a bit downhill with each one, and it kind of just depends how much you like watching Atchison.
Sometimes, it reminds me, I need to get back to watching Blackadder. Anywho.
You should. Which season are you even on?
I've only started on the first one, so...
It gets better. Just you can skip the first one profitably. Just get to the second season and you will never want to turn it off again.
Right.
Also, time travel episode, Christmas special, Blackadder back and forth.
Back and forth.
I don't think there's a watch in that one per se, but he does invent a time machine based on an old Leonardo da Vinci drawing that takes him back through historical periods in English history.
Cool. So it can meet his previous incarnations?
Yes.
Excellent.
And including Roman times, where I think Stephen Fry comes in and just belts out a speech in Latin.
Nice. What did they say? I have no idea.
Well, it's subtitled.
Oh.
But they're all quipping in English, and then he shows up. I was like, "Good job doing your English, boys, but I have a message from Rome. Itsats custode quicho."
Nice.
Really, really amazing show.
So I'll have to get back on that.
That was all of yours. I think we've gotten through both of our lists right now, and we're talking about Blackadder, which would be a different show.
Yes, with maybe some science fiction elements, but not too many watches. So
yes, only possibly the time travel episode and maybe the Christmas special has science fiction elements.
So we've diverged quite a bit. So maybe we should move on to the next thing.
Yes, we have the galaxy's favorite game show.
Woo! Yay!
This time we don't so much have prizes.
Yes, we don't got prizes today.
So it's our quick fire quiz segment. Things in science fiction that go on your wrist but do not tell time.
All right, so the first one on my list is a communicator and teleport bracelet that doesn't actually tell time, but kind of looks like a watch. And this comes from the ancient British science fiction show, not named Doctor Who, but Blake 7.
I have not seen that.
It's pretty good. Yeah, it's very, very 80s, but or early 80s. Yeah. But these things, you have to have them on in order to use the transporters. And if you don't got one on, you're not going anywhere.
My first is also from Predator, and it just kind of includes their wrist blades, little net launcher doohickey. They've got all these cool killy things in their wrist, but the wrist blades are basically the iconic Predator weapon.
Shink, and I'm going to stab you now. Maha! My second one is something that goes on someone's wrist and kind of does a whole bunch of random stuff, and it's not entirely clear what the full functionality is, but it doesn't matter since it's all inside a computer anyway, and that's Glitch, Bob's little wrist-mounted dealio from the show Reboot. Remember that?
Yes. I'd completely forgotten about Glitch. I remember Reboot.
So, Glitch doesn't so much tell time, he just sort of does everything else.
My next is also a pick from Star Trek, which is those utterly ridiculous wrist-mounted flashlights. that are just, they're so 90s because they obviously just took a couple of double D battery flashlights and strapped them to someone's wrist. It looks like the most ungainly thing you could possibly imagine.
So what you're saying is, in order to see forward, I need to take my hand off my phaser and kind of, or like angle my phaser in a weird way in order to sort of point it where I want to look. And then I have to like not be shining the light at the thing I'm trying to shoot if we're in a dangerous situation. What?
Basically, you have to hold your arm out weirdly straight with your wrist. Like, your hand's going to get tired.
Yes.
They're the worst flashlights I've ever seen in my life. Why would you have a wrist-mounted flashlight?
You see, in the future, ergonomics are not a thing anymore, apparently. So my third item is a wrist-mounted computer in a movie that I have not actually seen.
Good start.
Yes. And that's Donatello's device in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the 2014 version. Yeah.
Now I'm thinking about it.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Get one, go. Have us think about something else.
Mine is actually also from a more modern movie. Black Panther, the multi-purpose do-whatever-we-need vibranium wrist bead things.
Cool. Yeah, those things were pretty versatile in their capabilities.
Yes, they were communicators, healing, something or others, remote controls. They basically did whatever they wanted.
Yes, that's their multi-tool, their glitch. Speaking of things that are kind of doing whatever is kind of necessary for the plot when people remember it exists, so it's a big sort of band thing that goes over the forearm that a particular one-eyed individual in the years 3000 makes use of, Madame Leela from Futurama.
That's the thing on her wrist.
It's the thing on her wrist. It's all it's sort of described as ever. It's like, apparently this thing on my wrist can do this, so I'm going to do that now.
It even plays Pong.
Yeah. And it's sort of we need someone to have a tech device, so yeah, sort of thing. It's either that or Bender.
I have a Doctor Who pick, which is Captain Jack's Vortex Manipulator.
Holy smokes, that was my next one as well. Because it like straps on your wrist, but instead of telling you time, it just sort of sends you through time.
Yes, it jumps you around. It's described as like the jank version of time travel by the Doctor.
It's a dirty version of time travel. It's just so uncouth.
I'm sorry, I stole one of yours, so you go.
My last one on my list is it's a wrist gadget that is also just a sticker on someone's arm, and that would be Buzz Lightyear's wrist gadget dealio in the Toy Story movies.
We never figure out quite what that thing does.
Yeah. Other than he sort of communicates with it, or at least thinks he does at one point, and then he removes the sticker at some point. So
I think it's also supposed to be some sort of atmospheric scanner, I think they say in the beginning, too.
So sort of, once again, a multi-tool gadget that with unknown sort of things it can do.
Finally, I have a sort of general one from just the era of 60s TV and radio, which is the two-way wrist television.
Oh, yeah.
Appearing in Dick Tracy, various radio plays, Rocky and Bullwinkle.
So kind of a universal sort of trope showing up in multiple media franchises.
Also, just the Rocky and Bullwinkle, I have to do you have a two-way wrist television? Everyone has one. A two-way wrist television? No, a two-way wrist. Rocky and Bullwinkle was so much better written, and it came out before original series.
Yep.
How did TV go downhill?
I don't know. I don't know. I'm going to say aliens.
Rocky and Bullwinkle was just a weird aberration. It was better than anything on TV for the next 40 years.
Yeah, we're going to be goofy and off the wall and just sort of do stuff. And, some things don't make any sense, but that's kind of the joke.
All right, we strayed again. Yes. So thank you for joining us on the Galaxy's favorite game show.
Woohoo! Oh man, we got lots of watches today.
We did have a lot of watches.
So what time is it?
What time is it right now? .com.
That's maybe the watch of the future, man.
That's just bringing my mind to so many BoJack Horseman jokes that I don't know how familiar anybody else is with BoJack.
I know a few things, but I've not actually seen the show myself.
Why is no one watching this show?
It's on Netflix, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay. They just started syndicating it on Comedy Central too.
Okay. Well, I also don't have cable, so.
BoJack is a good show.
It's one of those shows I do want to watch, and so I just need to figure out a means to do so, or alternatively get Netflix.
So nobody's gonna get it if I say Newt time.
So I didn't get it, but somebody in the audience did.
I hope somebody does, because I don't have an outro. So I'm just gonna say that next time it's Newt time.
It's Newt time, yeah.
Thank you for joining us. We don't have an outro for this bit, so we'll see you next time on Watches of Tomorrow.
Next time on Watches of Tomorrow, haha! April Fools! You have been listening to Watchers of Tomorrow, a podcast on science fiction media. Find and follow Watchers of Tomorrow on Podbean, YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Pocket Cast, Spreader, Digital Podcast, and perhaps many more to come. If you enjoy our podcast, make sure to subscribe for more. And where possible, make sure to rate your experience or leave us a review. You may find Gepwin on youtube.com/Gepwin and Twitter @Gepwin. You may find me, Dr. Isix, on youtube.com/Dr. Isix and Twitter @IsixLP. Music is Waveform and Mori's Principle, both by DRKRN. You can also check out the Watchers of Tomorrow Discord channel. Make sure to share the experience with your friends, family, enemies, and alien overlords. If you feel you are suffering from transporter syndrome, please be aware that the next time you step off the transporter, that you, that is now, no longer exists.